get started.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to turn off this poll in just one more minute. So if you haven't taken our poll question, please do.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. I'm Kathleen Leibowitz, and I am one of the community directors for Raleigh for Towards Zero Waste. This event has been co-sponsored by two great nonprofits, Hungry Harvest and Towards Zero Waste. The work of both these groups do complement each other in a very positive way. Hungry Harvest's main mission is to eliminate food waste and eliminate hunger, while Towards Zero Waste vision is to see a North Carolina where individuals, families, businesses, and local governments are mindful of the waste they create and take active steps to drastically minimize landfill contributions. We have a special guest tonight. With pleasure, I'd like to introduce our District 31 representative, Zach Hawkins. And I don't see him up on the screen, but he must be somewhere here.
I'm here.
You're here. Yeah. I did a little research on you so I could write a little bio up, but what was better was that I was reading the North Carolina Legislative Scorecard of Legislators last night, and that's published by the North Carolina League of Conservation Voters, and you got 100%.
Yay.
And because you demonstrate firm commitment to protecting air, water, and renewable energy future. And you are the primary sponsor for House Bill 119, which is a food reduction bill. So I'll let you talk about that. You go right ahead.
Yeah, well, this is an amazing night for both of these organizations to host a conversation that's just essential. I think that when we realize where we are as a country, COVID-19 has exposed a lot. It's exposed lots of divides, digital, and wealth, and a lot of other things. But one thing that has remained true is that we have to ensure that we don't waste and that we feed people. Right? Food needs to get to the folks who absolutely need it. There are a lot of people who are working families and working poor that just can't afford. And we in North Carolina, waste a good amount of food, and across the country waste billions of meals. And the bill, House Bill, 1119, is the Food Waste Reduction Act. And so what we've done, and I'm so glad that Towards Zero has, decided to jump in as a stakeholder on this, because this is a problem that we can solve in our lifetimes. We can solve it next session if we really have the fortitude and the political will. And so just to give you a little bit of background before you get started on this amazing movie, Just Eat It. The Reduction Act seeks to reduce the amount of food that is wasted and rotting in landfills. And so what we know is that restaurants, supermarkets, hotels, stadiums, and others generate a large number, tons of food waste per week at a single location. And so what we're saying to them is that if you have an organics recycler within 25 miles, that's where it should go, right? And the reason for that is that what we find is that so many, as you well know, could go to another human that could eat that food, and we need to allow for regulations to be loosened so that can happen. We need to ensure that if a human can't eat it and get it in a timely manner, that it go to an animal, right, so that it can be consumed. And we can make sure that if it needs to, it can go a little bit further down the line. But what we're saying is that incinerators and landfills should not take it unless it's absolutely necessary that it didn't have another destination. And so I believe that we can get there in North Carolina. And I believe that we can get there with the help of people like you advocating and educating people like you are tonight. And so I did share this video on Facebook, and I'm gonna share it both on my personal and on my representative page, because I'm pretty dedicated to this. And I'm just asking you, if you can, to continue this fight with me, because we're hoping that with this bill, of course, it will go through many iterations with the stakeholder group, But in 2021, when we get back in the legislative session, we'll have a chance to file this bill with a lot of input so that it not only can do what I said, but hopefully we will be able to create, tax incentives for those, entities that donate food, right? So that they can get something out of it, because there are some basic federal, tax structures that don't go far enough and incentivize, especially small restaurants and businesses. We believe that it can help a struggling economy, and most importantly, a lot of people who are going hungry will have access. And so we've seen the models from around the country. We have a lot of folks from legislatures that have done this well, helping us. So I'm glad that you just gave me 5 minutes to introduce this bill and let people know that the advocacy that you do is not falling on deaf ears. That if there are a lot of people who are listening, and I'm definitely one of them, I'm glad to be the primary sponsor of this bill. So I know that the folks, Dargan, those, and Lee can get in contact with me. So if you have any questions, or if you want to join the conversation, let me know, and I'm all in. But thank you. Enjoy the movie tonight. Just eat it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. What a title. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Talk to you later.
Thanks.
I'll be in touch.
Let's see. Let me introduce you to the rest of the team that worked hard to make this screening happen tonight. Of course, our co-founders of Towards Zero Waste are Dargan Gilmore and Lee Williams. Our meeting host, Dawn Comfort, who's also community director of Towards Zero Waste. We have Callista Pop, who is the event coordinator for Hungry Harvest. I hope everybody's picture's coming up. And we have Bart Chrisman, who has 2 titles tonight. He is a director at Hungry Harvest and also one of our panel members. So wanted to check if Dawn's out there with our poll results before we go any farther.
I am. Okay, so our question was, how much food waste is generated by an average North Carolinian in the course of a year? And the answer is 250 pounds, which 44% of you guessed. And just to put that in relative terms, that's about the size of a giant panda. Now, if you multiply that by all the North Carolinians, we're talking about 1.2 tons of food waste, 1.2 million tons of food waste. So that just gives us sort of the starting point of how we need to be thinking when we view this movie.
Yes. Thank you, Dawn. Let me just do a quick intro to give people, if you if you don't know too much about the movie, that this movie was made by the documentary filmmakers Grant Baldwin and Jenny Russmeyer when they dive into the food waste issue by pledging to quit grocery shopping cold turkey and survive only on foods that would otherwise be thrown away. Just eat it as a result of their food waste journey. So I think, Greg, you can start the movie.
Okay, give me just a second to get it up. If anyone wants to pop any popcorn or anything.
I was going to say, it's best to probably watch it in speaker view, right, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how, I think most people at this point of 2020 are hopefully familiar with Zoom, so you can.
You never know, for me.
So let me get it pulled up. I'll share my screen here and get it queued up here in just a second.
And we do want to encourage you, as questions or thoughts come up as you're watching the movie, please put them in the chat, and we will be asking our panelists at the end of the movie any questions you have that come up.
Okay. Does everybody hear me? Put your thumb up. Tell me if you can hear me. Okay. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the movie. we're now going to move on to our panel discussion. I'd like to introduce everybody. First, we have Bart Chrisman, who is with Hungry Harvest. He is the proud grandson of a small Western North Carolina farm family, a former healthy living entrepreneur, and a current resident of Raleigh, North Carolina. He oversees the remote markets growth team for Hungry Harvest. That includes Triangle, Charlotte, Philadelphia, Miami, and Detroit. Hungry Harvest is a Baltimore-based farm-to-door produce delivery company who pioneered the ugly fruit and vegetable movement. In just the last few years, Hungry Harvest has connected over 18 million pounds of oddly sized or shaped fruit and vegetables to customers seeking more affordable access to fresh produce, while donating and subsidizing about 1.5 million pounds more through hunger relief organizations like the Interfaith Food Shuttle. Thank you, Bart, for being on our panel tonight. Our next panelist is Bianca Howard. Is she up? Can I see? I hope Bianca, okay, is she, okay. Bianca has served as outreach and marketing supervisor for the Wake County Solid Waste Division since 2018. Her responsibilities include managing a drop-off program that keeps more than 30 tons of wasted food out of the landfill each year. She also collaborates on solutions to the growing problem of wasted food through the food recovery circle of the Capital Area Food Network. Thank you, Bianca. Our third panelist is Flori Pate. She is the co-founder, creative director of Dig Local, that is diglocal.com, a mobile app that tells you where to eat, shop, stay, and play every day in Asheville, North Carolina. She is also a co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit Food Connection, that is food-connection.org, a service that rescues surplus freshly prepared meals from restaurants, catered events, and institutions, and delivers them to local nonprofits who feed those in need in order to reduce food waste and ease hunger. Flori lives in North Asheville with her husband Ted and teenage sons Collier and Charlie and chocolate lab Ruby. Then our last is Baptiste, and I don't know if I say the last name. I didn't do very well in French class, but Baptiste is a activist for a social and environmental change with a focus on the issue of food waste. In 2017, he pedaled from Paris to New York by bike and pedal boat, eating only expired and wasted food. Towards Zero Waste had the honor of hosting him when he passed the Triangle during that incredible journey. Still residing and active in France, he hopes to continue raising awareness and pushing for change to French and European laws regarding food waste. This is an incredible panel we have. So I think we're gonna now, we had some questions that people put in the chat. Let's see, Lee, are you ready to take over?
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So I want to encourage any of the viewers that are willing to turn on your cameras so that the panelists can see their audience. Sometimes it's a little disconcerting talking to people who aren't there. But remember that we are recording this part of the session. So if you don't want to be on camera, no problem. Just stay off. And I'm gonna start us with a couple of questions, and I want to encourage anybody to just put questions in the chat. Our moderators are going to be pulling them up and getting them to me so I can ask them. I think for this one, let's start with Bart, since he's one of our sponsors here. Many of our personal experiences with food waste is only of that which gets wasted in our own homes. Can you share with us something about the amounts of food that Hungry Harvest recovers that would have otherwise gone to waste?
Yeah, that was the most striking thing to me when I first started working for Hungry Harvest about 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. We think of food waste in the home as kind of a meal here, or some lettuce we weren't able to get to, but kind of going behind the scenes on I guess in warehouses or trucks that ship tons of produce, you begin to see just the magnitude of what ends up going to waste. And I mean, you saw it a little bit in the movie with some of the dumpsters and just how big they are and how full they are of food. And that's pretty common behind the scenes. I mean, my first week, we rescued a pallet of bell peppers that was just shipped to the wrong location. And no one wanted to pay the cost to pick them up because, there's a lot of bell peppers on the market you can buy. And so we ended up with them. And it's just crazy how every week we have stories like that of things that slip through the cracks behind the scenes and just how much it is. Like a pallet of bell peppers taller than me, there was just no one really wanted. So just like I said, or like someone mentioned earlier, we've rescued about 18 million pounds of food since 2014, and that is just an unfathomable amount, and it's just scratching the surface. We can't hear you, Lee.
You guys can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
No?
Yep.
Yes. Wait.
No?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Maybe there's something with my headphones. They probably got pulled out a little. Sorry about that. So this next question is for Bianca. We know, despite the fact that the state no longer requires it, Wake County has continued to monitor and report numbers on what is going into our county's landfill. Can you share with us the numbers on food waste and what impact pulling that waste out of the waste stream could have on the life of our landfill?
Thanks. Yes, as you mentioned, we had conducted a study in April of 2019, a waste characterization study, which was basically a snapshot of what Wake County residents and businesses are throwing away. And one of the most striking things about that is that when you look at what we throw away by weight, the single biggest category is food waste. And it was up to just about 25% of what we throw away. So that's something we can all relate to. And that was across all streams. We looked at what came out of single family homes, what came out of businesses and multifamily homes, and also what came to Wake County convenience centers, which are mostly used by people who live in unincorporated Wake County. Removing at least some of that food waste would have an impact on the life of the landfill, and it would also have perhaps an impact on sort of the short-term effects, which include some of the odor issues and traffic we deal with just as a daily basis is part of the impacts of the landfill.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to go next. I think I better go to Baptiste. He was nodding off a little earlier, and so we need to engage him and keep him awake. Baptiste, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. So you started a petition to the EU regarding best before dates that over 50,000 people have signed. Can you explain why best before dates exist and why you would like to see them eliminated? And then I have a follow-up question to that one.
What? Sorry?
I said I have a follow-up question.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess I can explain why they exist, even though yeah, I don't think they should. I suppose they were, at least in Europe, they made them to, at first they said it was to inform the customer when the product, when it's not as good as, which is why it says best before. So the product might lose some I don't know how you call it in English. Sorry, I haven't spoken English in a really long time. I'm so sorry.
You're doing great.
The product might lose vitamins or taste, or it may not have the same structure, but you can still eat it, as opposed to like the consume by. So in Europe, I was listening in the movie in United States and in Canada, there's like tens of different ways to put it. They said fresh before, or you will prefer before, used by, or there's like tens of expression. In Europe, there's only two. but even though there's two, people confuse these two, and they like 90% of the people, I think there's a study that says 90% of the people can't explain the difference between consume by and best buy. So yeah, the idea of the petition is to remove the best buy because, well, we don't need it. There's nothing wrong eating the product even 10 years after the best by date has been passed. So it's only like confusing the consumer to have such dates. And one of the things that's really absurd in Europe is that there is an exception about these dates on the bulk. Like if you buy rice without a package, then you don't have to have this date because you can't put a date on each little grain of rice. So people can buy rice without date when it's bulk, but if they buy the same rice in a plastic bag, then it has a best before dates that's going to make them believe they have to throw it away, and they do throw it away.
Very interesting. I buy in bulk, so that's good to know. So to follow up with that question, in North Carolina, we have something called a Dillon's rule, which prevents local municipalities from taking certain actions. What is the relationship between France and the EU regarding this issue? Can France and other EU members eliminate best before dates on their own? No.
No, it's a European law, so they can't go past it. It's like if Europe is a federal kind of organization, not country, but and there is like laws cannot be I don't know, each country cannot do if the Europe says, I mean they could, France could disobey, but then they have to pay like penalties. Right. And so
okay, yeah. So we're in the same boat over here. Would like to figure out how to get that sorted.
And one thing to add to that, here a couple years ago, we started adding products to our marketplace, like cheese and other items like that. And we get a lot. So grocery stores have a 6-month window for a lot of these products here, like cheese. And if they are within 6 months of that best buy date, the grocery stores won't accept them. And a lot of times the manufacturers don't have an outlet for them, and those end up without a home. So we started sourcing a lot of those products, but that blew my mind when I found out like certain products have a 6-month window. And it just seems crazy.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to move to Flori. She's with Food Connection of Asheville, which saves food and gives it to people who need it. The first question is, did you get a lot of pushback from givers or receivers of food in terms of liability?
At first, because what we do is not necessarily grocery store rescue, but it's prepared meals. So salmon, crab cakes, risotto. If you can imagine someone is having a wedding or an event, and the worst thing that could possibly happen is that they run out of food. So these caterers are making way more food than they'll need. And so it's trays of beautiful food that's never even left the kitchen. So when we first started Food Connection, we were operating under the Good Samaritan law, and that was going great. But then we were meeting with people who had been in the restaurant industry for decades. And they said the reason that we've been throwing away all that food is because of liability. And then when we told them about the Good Samaritan law, they kind of relaxed, and they understood that there was an alternative to composting beautiful trays of unserved food that had not even left the kitchen. And so at first it was not really pushback so much as just a quizzical, I had no idea that was even possible.
Awesome. And I can add to that, when this film was shown by the town of Cary a few years ago, I stood up and told everybody that our new Earth Fair was throwing out their food. And so people went to Earth Fair, and the manager told me that was the worst week of his life. Thank you very much. And later, about 4 months later, he found me in the aisle and he said, I want you to know we found a solution and we found somewhere to send our food. And the issue was that they thought they would be liable. And so just letting people know about the Good Samaritan Act can really make a difference.
It's so true. And since we launched 5 years ago, we have delivered over 250,000 rescued meals, and that's kept 150 tons of prepared food out of the landfill. And it also has been a significant amount of protein too, because, you know, we like barbecue in this part of the state, as I know y'all probably do too. So, I mean, there's a lot of meat that's produced here for events, and instead of it ending up in the landfill creating methane gas, it's going to feed one person out of 6 in our area does not have enough to eat. So, I mean, food insecurity is a horrible problem in Western North Carolina, as I know it is in many parts of the state. And so there's such an abundance of food that nobody should be going hungry. It's just a matter of connecting the dots, and that's what Food Connection does.
Absolutely. We did have a question that was partially answered on Zoom from Barbara. She asked where the filmmakers are from. They're actually from BC, and I happened to talk to one of them on the phone today, British Columbia. But a lot of this was filmed in North Carolina because Jonathan Bloom, who was in the film, is in North Carolina. And so the second part of that question is, how did they find such bountiful dumpsters? And Bart has kind of already given us a little information on that, but to the rest of the panelists, is this pretty typical, what we were seeing in the film? Is this what we can see everywhere? I know Baptiste has been in a lot of dumpsters, so he can probably tell us.
Yeah, I've never seen like one as big as the pool. He says it's like as big as a small pool, and it's filled with hummus, you say? I've never seen that big, and I don't know where. Yeah, I didn't quite understand in the movie where it was. But other than that, yeah, the bins of the supermarket are really filled, probably more in the US than in Europe. But in Europe, we still have like similar, maybe the supermarkets are not as big either. So, but yeah, it's the same everywhere.
Awesome. Okay. And Megan from Zoom says, well, let's see, I think I'm getting mixed up here. Have there been any studies done to see if companies such as Compost Now have made significant impacts on reducing the impact of food waste? So that's kind of taken it not so much from in our homes, you know, it's hard for us to give our leftover food away. So I guess that's asking composting, is that helping?
Can I answer that from Wake County's perspective?
Sure.
Great. Well, I'm sure that Compost Now has made a difference for individual households as well as for those restaurants and offices that use them. As a county, we have a lot of work to do. The study I mentioned that was done in April of 2019 was our first study of that type since 2011, and we found that the percentage of food waste actually increased. So in 2011, 15% of the waste pie was comprised of food. In 2019, that number had grown to 25%. And we know we're a large county, we're the largest county in North Carolina now, I believe. So there's certainly a lot of pressures, I think, contributing towards the growing amount of waste overall that we're throwing away and the growing percentage of food waste here in Wake County.
Awesome. That's helpful. Does anyone want to add to that at all? Or does anyone have information on that? I'll go on to the next question, and this one is relative to what's going on now for Flori. The CDC has said that food and food packaging is now not thought to be a vector for spread of COVID. That said, how has COVID forced you to change your business model or organization model from a supply, demand, and or a safety perspective?
Well, because what we do is rescue unserved meals from weddings, events, conferences, places like the Grove Park Inn and Biltmore, UNCA. When COVID happened and everything shut down, we did have to pivot our business model to continue providing meals. And we did that in a way to get local chefs back in the kitchen. We actually hired chefs to make meals for us. So that's a bit of a pivot that does not clearly have to do directly with food waste, but that's exactly what we did just to address the hunger problems that consisted and actually increased through the pandemic. As far as safety goes, of course, we follow all the Serve Safe guidelines, and we've continued to rescue food, and we just operate with of course, everybody's safety at mind and top of mind, actually. So, but the truth is, I mean, with rescued food or during COVID, people need to eat. There's enough food for everybody. We have not gotten a single call that anyone was hurt by any of our food ever. No one's even said that they got any problems with our food, and that's 300,000 meals total right now. So I think sometimes in America, everybody's on high alert, and then meanwhile, people are literally starving in our country. So I think that common sense and safety with washing your hands, and of course, not volunteering or anything if you're feeling bad, and continuing to move the food has been critical for our people here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we have another question from Zoom. I don't see too many coming off of Facebook Live. So if anybody's on Facebook Live and has a question, please share. But Barbara from Zoom asked this question to anyone on the panel. She said, I'd love to rescue food from dumpsters to feed myself, my family, and the community as the filmmakers did, though it's not socially acceptable to be seen opening and poking in random dumpsters. Are there any organizations that do it regularly? And she's in the San Francisco Bay Area, so we might not have the answer to that. And or that get tipped off food, rescued food. Now, I just want to, as Towards Zero Waste, we do want to just say that we don't necessarily condone dumpsters diving. It can be dangerous. We're not sure about the legality. The question was asked the last time we were here, and it's really hard to find that answer. Maybe someone else has that answer to that question this time. What we did find is certainly if it's a private, you can't go in anyone's private dumpster. And if someone asks you to leave, you need to leave quickly. But also there is a safety issue. This year in North Carolina, there was a young woman named Stephanie Cox in Greensboro who was dumpster diving and was killed doing it because the truck came and didn't realize that she was in it. So I just want to say that we're not telling anybody to go dumpster dive. That said, we do have an experienced dumpster diver in our midst tonight. And the question, you may not even remember what it was, but are there organizations that do it regularly? Anyone know?
I'm staying away from this one.
Baptiste, do you want to give us any dumpster diving experience or tips, even though we're not recommending it?
I don't know. I actually wouldn't recommend it either. Like I never do it. A lot of times people ask me for where the good spots are in my city, and I actually really hate to do this, and I only do it to show that it's a problem, but I really don't think it's something sustainable, I guess. And I'd rather, give money to someone who's not wasting and who deserves the money rather than get free food in this way, because the food usually it's not actually really healthy food. So no, I don't really have any tips on like I haven't gone dumpster since last time I did it was probably in the US.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so we do have a Facebook question from Stephanie. She says, I would love to be able to buy my food in bulk, but not sure where to go. Do you have any suggestions? And if no one can answer that, I can give it a little go. I think during COVID, we have had less bulk options because it was initially, and I think it was the right thing to do initially, grocery stores stopped offering bulk foods because of the fear of contamination. But now we know from the CDC that this is not, they're not finding food to be a vector for COVID-19. So Whole Foods has quite a few bulk bins back opened. Sprouts, where else? My brain is not thinking very well. But there are several local here in North Carolina, here in the Triangle area. I do most of my shopping now that Earth Fair closed, rest in peace, at Whole Foods. But one of our R's, if you're familiar with Towards Zero Waste, we have a bunch of R's that we like, and one of them is request. And we think the biggest thing that you can do is ask for what you want. And so, go to your Harris Teeter and ask for a bulk section. I know the Lowe's Foods has a very small bulk section, but if people go in and use it, it might grow. So it's just about letting them know that we want it and using it. Okay, I am going to move on to a question. Lori from Zoom, this is also a grocery store question. Lori from Zoom asks, is there a store like Quest Food Grocery, which was shown in the film, in the Triangle area? Does anyone know? I haven't heard of one, but it's an excellent idea. We have a question from Deborah from Zoom, who asks, does Wake County have plans to compost at the city level?
Well, again, I can talk a little bit for Wake County, and then if anyone wants to step in and talk on behalf of the 12 cities and towns, I'll be happy to let them do that. Well, there are three things I'd like to tell you about. One is we're continuing to encourage people who want to compost at the household level. For the last 5 years, we've held a compost bin sale, which we don't make any money on, but the purpose of that is to help beginning composters get started by providing an easy way to pre-order and receive compost bins. We just finished our best year ever distributing 1,600 bins in the course of 1 month, which was almost 3 times the amount from last year. So there are a lot of people in the Triangle area, not just in Wake County, who participated in that sale. And I think because of COVID and everyone staying home so much, there's a real interest in gardening. And I think that's fed into, no pun intended, an interest in composting. So that's one thing we're doing to encourage waste reduction and composting at the household level. Another thing we're doing is continuing our food waste collection program, which is we contract with Compost Now to provide food waste collection at 4 of our 11 convenience centers. That also just finished its best year ever, keeping 43 tons of food out of the landfill. While we're happy about that, we threw away 500,000 tons of garbage last year. So it's literally a drop in the bucket. But we are continuing to grow that program and to work with Compost Now to really think about not just continuing that program, but ways we might collaborate with others to provide that sort of service, a drop-off service at more locations. Finally, I'm really excited that we just wrapped up our first comprehensive solid waste plan since 2012. This used to be a state requirement that every single city and town in the state had to update their plans every 3 years to talk about what we were doing to reduce waste and manage it appropriately. That's not required at the state level anymore, but as a fast-growing county and the largest county in North Carolina, we felt it was really important to talk about that. So we just were able, with support from all 12 cities and towns, to finish that plan. And so we are looking at ways, not just to manage the waste we have today, but to think about and to collaborate on a solution for our waste in the future. So part of what we're doing is not just thinking about what we can provide for the residents who live in the unincorporated parts of our county, but really how we can strengthen our overall future by working with the 12 cities and towns on efforts to reduce what we send to the landfill. And so that's something that we're going to continue talking about. But again, that's what we're doing at the county level. If anyone wants to talk for any of the 12 cities or towns, I'll give them the opportunity to do that.
We do have several council members. I should have pointed that out early, from several of our local municipalities. So we want to welcome them. And I always encourage people to, speak to your local government if you're interested in composting coming to your town, and talk to them about why you think it's important. And hopefully we get some North Carolina towns moving in that direction. I do have somebody letting me know that there's an online standard called Azure Standard for Bulk Online, answering a last question that the a former question that we had. If somebody wants to share that in the chat, that might be helpful. Okay, and we have a question, doesn't say who it's from, but Representative Hawkins, who spoke at the beginning of the film, Representative Hawkins' bill, excuse me, is one of the first in North Carolina that I know of. Are there any bills in France or any other states? Does anyone know? See, I'm trying to.
I think the Representative Hawkins, in part, modeled his act on a law, I think from New York State. So I'd say my limited knowledge is that the action on food waste bans has gotten far more traction in northeastern states, where landfill space is quite limited and very expensive, than here in the South, where we have a lot of landfill capacity and tipping fees are pretty low. So I'm not aware of any bans anywhere in the Southeast, but I do think that Vermont and New York and more recently New Jersey are looking at food waste bans that have led to some, or are leading to some real policy changes.
Yeah.
We'll probably do one more question and then we'll probably need to wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Okay. Let's see. We have a quick question. What is Wake County? Oh, actually, we've already asked that one. I'm sorry, I'm getting myself confused. Okay. Maybe we haven't. What is Wake County doing to help decrease the percentage of food waste that is making it to the landfill?
Well, I'll just add to that. In addition to the three things I mentioned, the annual compost bin sale, working with the 12 cities and towns within our county, those are two big things that we're doing. We also have a small grants program that gives organizations, including schools and nonprofits, as well as businesses, the chance to apply for up to $10,000 to do a project to reduce waste. We were really happy to fund 3 projects focused on food waste composting in 2020. Unfortunately, 2 of them were public schools and 1 was NC State University. So there have been some delays in those because of COVID-19. But we do plan to offer those grants again, and people can check our website. I'll put it in the chat after Labor Day for a new application. I will say that one of the big issues that maybe was kind of touched upon in the film is looking at where waste comes from. At Wake County Solid Waste, we're primarily focused on providing services and facilities for use by residents, but businesses make up about half of what goes into our landfill. And right now we don't have a lot of economic incentives or disincentives that would really encourage businesses to look at reducing their food waste. And I know Representative Hawkins talked a little bit about economic incentives in his bill, and it would be interesting really to see how that shakes out. And I do know that our state government, the Division of Environmental Assistance and Community and Customer Service, has been a part of those conversations, and hopefully that'll help the bill get some traction when the legislature reconvenes in the session in January.
Awesome. And Towards Zero Waste was able to sit in on there was a federal grant offered as well. And so it looks like this is starting to be something people are paying attention to. I'm going to give each panelist the opportunity to just say any last words, since we're getting close to the end of our time together. So let's start with Bart. Do you have any parting thoughts? And if it's just thank you, goodbye, that's okay.
Yeah, thanks everyone for putting this together. I will say, in terms of, we are certainly one option to get produce that would otherwise go to waste, but I will also say that there's a lot of CSAs right now who have, are small farms who have shifted from providing restaurants with produce to CSAs. And that's one really good way to support your local farms. So if you're able to, and you're interested, go ahead and check out, just Google CSAs near me. And there's a ton of options here in the Triangle, and I'm sure everywhere else. But yeah, just a lot of good options to support farmers, especially with how things have changed and how kind of the supply chains have changed with COVID. So I really encourage people to just do a little research and see if there's a way that every week in their own homes they can help prevent food waste that happens kind of further down the supply chain.
Awesome. Flori?
I want to say that I loved the film. I thought everything about it was so entertaining, eye-opening. I learned things, and I thought just the cinematography was fantastic. One thing that stood out for me was the quote, "We are trashing the land to grow food that no one eats." And I know that we also, in being so wasteful in our country and around the globe, it's a huge problem, but we also have a huge hunger problem. So I would love for everybody to remember the hierarchy of need, and the hierarchy of the pyramid of waste. And the very first thing that you need to do is try to feed people. So composting is excellent, but there were 3 things in place prior to composting: feed people, feed animals, and alternative energy sources, and then composting. While we can all celebrate when we're composting, we need to try to address those 3 things prior to things ending up in our compost bin.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next on in my screen is Baptiste. And Baptiste, I have one more question that was put in for you if you would like it, or you can just say your parting words.
Yeah, what's the question?
Okay, it is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
France has recently taken action to help prevent food waste. Can you tell us a bit about that, and what more you'd like to see done?
Yeah. There's actually there was a question earlier about like food waste bans or about the law. There is a law in France that like if a business has food to be wasted, instead of wasting it, if they donate it because it's still eatable, they have like a 70% tax reduction. So this is working really well as a way to reduce food waste, because businesses no longer put food in the bins because they have to pay when you put food or whatever you put in the trash, you have to pay someone to collect your trash. And instead, so they donate it to nonprofits and they get tax redemption. So they really reduce food waste. So it's reducing the food waste, but it's really not a good law to me, because it's rewarding someone. I mean, the consumer is still paying for that food, and yeah, I think it gives like the opportunity for the business not to worry about food waste, because anyways he's gonna get money back. So they order so much huge quantities, and they don't even have to worry at least before they would lose the money because it's in the trash, they have to pay, and now they don't lose that much money anymore, but the consumer is still paying for it. But it seems that it has reduced the amount of food going to the trash in France, at least. And I mean, France has been known in Europe and maybe other countries in the world, has been quite famous for this law that passed, and the pyramid of this is like in the law as well. Businesses have to find I don't know, try to make this pyramid work and find humans to give the food to, and then find animals, find create electricity. So
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for joining us in the middle of the night in France.
no problem.
Are we at 3 a.m. now in France?
Yeah, it's about that time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah, wow. So Bianca, you're last, and we did have one more question come through as well about recommendations for people to reduce their food waste. If you want to speak to that, or we can send out that answer later, and you could speak to whatever's on your mind.
I'll be happy to speak to that. So first, I would say that this film helped remind me that this problem is huge, but there are places where all of us interact with that, and we can look for those opportunities to make a difference and to advocate for the change we want to see. So as far as reducing food waste. Again, I would be happy to talk with people if they have specific questions about what Wake County government is doing. I feel like I kind of missed the question. Just as a final thought, you know, while what we throw away is growing here in Wake County, we have also, you know, seen a shift in who is throwing things away. We're seeing more trash from from residents as people stay home, and less from businesses. So I'd say, I read something recently that someone said about the pandemic, when we go back, let's not go all the way back. And so I've been keeping that in mind. And I think the more I learn about this issue, the more hopeful I feel that there are a lot of people who care about this, and who are willing to not do things exactly the way they were before this pandemic. So thank you again for having me as part of this panel tonight.
Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to throw it back to Kathleen and let her close us out.
Yes, thank you all for attending. We'd like to just put a little shout out for Towards Zero Waste website. We'd love for you guys to check that out. We have a list of future events, such as the community screening of the movie, The Story of Plastic. And there'll be a panel discussion with that. That'll be September 15th. And we're also going to have a Towards Zero Waste 101 virtual class on November 17th. Keep in mind that all our movie screenings and events are provided by donations. So if you would like to help us to continue to provide this education, please consider making a donation on our Towards Zero Waste website. Thank you all for attending, and I hope you have a nice night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great
Thanks.
night.
I'm